Hello, welcome back. Hi, Dave.
Hello.
There's something new about you.
I know. I have different color pants on. Can't see, but these glasses is what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're so fancy,
I know. I'm a fancy guy.
trendy.
My wife got these for me.
They're actually really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my goal in life, to be cool. I've been doing it so far. So
It's part of your brand.
it is.
If it's cool, you do it.
What's that?
If it's cool,
I do
you
it.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of Caleb when he was a little kid. He got a weirdest haircut at 12 years old. I said, "Are your friends wearing their hair like that?" He goes, "They will now." Anyway,
He's got no confidence.
yeah, no, that's leadership quality. Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, welcome back. It's good to be here with you, gathering on what we call the internet, on Facebook and YouTube. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for continuing to interact with us. It's really fun to hear from you. I think I say that every time, but it really is true. We love hearing from you. So continue to reach out to us and let us know what's impactful for you and what are the questions that you are wrestling with right now at this time. That's how these conversations get started. Sometimes it's something I'm irritated about and text Dave about, and sometimes it's something that's sparked by a comment or a further discussion. So keep interacting with us. We're going to get started. We're coming off of a couple episodes where we talked about expectations and suffering and the strange connection between suffering and joy, and what God has to say about that. And today we're going to move into what do we do when we've been scattered? Because if one thing is real right now, at least for me, is that I feel really scattered. Sometimes emotionally, honestly, sometimes physically. I mean, scattered in relationships. It's hard to even find agreements sometimes in our homes. And socially, we're scattered. A lot of us are alone, or this new phrase that's coming out, which is alone together. So we're just going to jump right into talking about scattered and at a time in history when the church was scattered. So Dave, why don't you go ahead and start by talking about what is the church and that period of time when the church was scattered.
Yeah, this actually started, when we finished our discussion last time about suffering and joy, and we were citing all these places in the scriptures where that suffering was part of the story, but so was this mystery of joy in the middle of it. One of the stories of the church going through a very difficult time was in Acts chapter 8, where Saul actually was ravaging the churches, the church of Jerusalem, not the churches, but the church in Jerusalem. And Stephen had just been stoned. A frightening thing. The very first verse of chapter 8 says, "And Saul gave hearty agreement to Stephen's being stoned," which emotionally just creates this anxiety, I think, of, man, we are outnumbered. We're being hunted, kind of thing. And Saul was a big guy. That's the guy who actually became Paul. But then it says that the churches were all scattered out of Jerusalem into Judea and even Samaria. Little side note here that's interesting. In Matthew 28, Jesus gave the Great Commission. And the Great Commission basically was, all authority has been given to me, I give it to you. Now I want you to go and make disciples, beginning in Jerusalem, but then in Judea and Samaria, and even the remotest parts of the earth. That's Matthew 28 and also Acts chapter 1. And they all said, yes, we will go, we will do, just like we often do in church, in our response to God. But they didn't. They didn't leave Jerusalem. I called Jerusalem the friendly confines, because the friendly confines, unlike just Wrigley Field, that's my dog going crazy. Unlike, I just lost my train.
The friendly confines of Jerusalem.
Yeah. Where everyone, there was basically the same culture. Everyone kind of went to church. Jerusalem was a hub of Judaism. There were other things there as well, but we were used to that. And so getting pushed out beyond what we were comfortable with, I've had this theory for a long time. We don't change until we have to. And so this persecution, all of a sudden they're in Samaria. In Acts chapter 9, they're in Samaria, and they're in a really crazy place. But the key word there was being scattered. And so last week, or the last time we talked, I was connecting that up with suffering. But since then, as you and I talked, I've connected it up to the church, our experience of the church. I'm not talking just Open Door, though that's my church. And but I'm talking to the Big C church, and that's what I've got in my mind, because here's what let me put it together like this. In Matthew 16, Jesus says to his disciples, it's kind of a famous phrase where he promises them to build the church. I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. And the gates of hell look like they're going to prevail because everything, again, Herod, all these persecutions that were coming at them, even at that time when Jesus was still there. The prevailing, Bonnie, would you close these doors? Thank you. That's on the tape. So with a promise like that, it feels like, I believe him. So he's going to build his church, and we're going to kind of win. There's something triumphant about that. And that I will build my church promise is also an offensive thing, not just a defensive. I used to get a picture of building the gates of hell not prevailing, like the gates of hell. We're coming at, the church. Blah, blah, blah. Well, don't worry, they're not going to win. It's really not like them coming at us. He's saying, no, the church filled with the life of God, the evil things of the world won't win. The gates of hell will not, they will fall. I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not win. Coronavirus is not going to win, ultimately. So that's a huge promise. And at Pentecost, how would you be feeling? He was right. Here we are. Prophecy fulfilled, right? We've been doing this for several episodes now. But now we're in Acts 8, 12 years later. And rather than looking like we're the winning team, looks like we're the losing team. And rather than feeling like Jesus is clearly building his church, looks like the church is being scattered, not built. But here's where the thing, I think, connects up with where we are. I think it was in the scattering that in ways no one could have known at the time, God was building. That in the very scattering, there were things going on that the people who were involved in it scared to death, but being faithful as they went, that God was up to stuff in the middle of what looked like he's not building his church. He's scattering his church. This is just counterproductive. And oh, by the way, another thing in Acts 8 Acts 8 is fascinating. When they were scattered, and then they finally get to Samaria, it says they went on their way, good newsing, rejoicing. There's that suffering and joy thing again. But we're connected to me, and it's really more questions than anything prophetic. Like I have this vision of what's going to be, but I do think that in the scattering, I don't know whatever word there is. I mean, we're not gathering on Sunday morning, feeling a little scattered, even in that very tangible way. This thing that has meant so much to us, and the gathering of God's people. There's something that happens in corporate worship when we're all together that it continually stuns me. It surprises me how incredible that is, and how I need to be with God by myself. I know, but something happens when we're all together, and we can't be all together. And there could come into that a kind of anxiety or fear that, oh my goodness, he's not building his church, he's scattering the church, and how can we do church this way? And let me introduce that analogy that a friend of mine told me about just the other day. And it was about what the church is going through right now. He compared it to, and this came actually from Alan Hirsch, but I heard it from my buddy Kent. And I'm not a chess player, but if you are a chess player, you know, and I hope this is true, that the queen is the most important piece on the board. It moves around. It's the person. It's the thing that gets most done. And that's the piece that saves the day. But if you really want to get good at chess, like you really want to kick it up a notch and pick up your game, a really good idea would be to learn to play without the queen. And what Kent and I were talking about was that it feels like, at least for a season, the church, we've lost the queen. And the queen, in my mind, and his too, was the gathering places, the places where we, invite people to come. The auditorium fills. We have 3 services. We have 5 services, whatever, how many services. It's all about you guys out there, come in here and we will gather in this room. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's the queen. I mean, that's the thing that accomplishes the most. That's the thing that's easiest to measure. It doesn't accomplish everything, but it's easy to measure. It's kind of where we raise the funds. It's what tells people, wow, or hey, that kind of stuff. And we're having to learn to play without the queen. And I don't think we would learn to play without the queen unless we had to.
Right.
Just like, and that's the other connection Acts 8. I don't think they would ever go to Samaria unless they had to. I wouldn't. And anyway, I take great solace in the fact, actually, that they took 12 years, because here these people are, and we know because of Pentecost that they were filled with the Spirit and sensitive to God, and they just didn't leave their comfort zone. It didn't matter. And neither will we. So I guess I'm filled with a sense of wonder and wondering what are the ways that God is going to teach us how to play without the queen until we get that peace back. And I think that peace matters. But that it's a powerful time, and not just as organizational churches, but as individuals. We are the church. So what are ways that, while I'm lamenting that we had to leave Jerusalem, right. Get it, anyway. What are ways that God may be already doing things? What are there some things I need to notice He's already done in our neighborhood, or the way I'm all of a sudden weirdly connecting with people? This is a bit much, but even this thing you and I are doing, I would never get on Facebook to do something like this if I didn't have to. I don't have to, but there were some things that were disruptive that got me to think about some things in an entirely different way. And I just wonder how much God is up to in all of this relative to that. And I love how practical you make it, Annika, because you talk about your families and just where we live. We're all feeling scattered. So, okay, what are some things in our families that we might need to know? In what way could we be playing without the proverbial queen? I don't even know what that means relative to that. But it's just a fascinating time. Another thing that connects in with this idea of liminal space. Yeah. Where you've left what you've known, but you haven't arrived at what's normal yet. But that's the place of change. And I would just invite everyone, individually, corporately, I would love feedback on Facebook. What are you noticing? What are ways we're already learning to adapt and to bring the kingdom and be the church without being able to go to church? That's been a dream of mine for years. How many years have I referred? I've always told her my paradigm was that the church is not where you play the game. This is not where you play the game. It's a locker room. Yeah. The locker room is where you come to get ready to play the game. You might need to get healed up in the church because you got beat up playing the game. You forgot why you're playing the game, so you want to come back and hear the mission and the vision and be reminded why it matters. But we played the game out there, and now we're playing the game. That is the only place we have to play it. Maybe it's a better thing than we know. And anyway, so, and the prophetic word I don't have is like, and it would look like this, and now I think, as I say some of this, people are going to be thinking, maybe. I did that last week. I had this interaction with a neighbor. I had or even some Zoom stuff, which feels like, what? Doesn't feel very organic. There are things happening there that are informing how we might want to do things. And there are things that are forming, that are informing us that we might never want to go back to. I don't know what they are. I honestly don't. But I guess I'm putting my finger on a pattern in the story of God, where people are resistant to change until they have to, and then they get scattered. And on every level you can imagine, that's a bad thing. I mean, Stephen got stoned. We're failing. You know, and now we're even Samaria itself. I mean, that's a whole nother talk, but Samaria metaphorically just speaks to a place that's unfamiliar. I don't know this place. I don't speak the language of internet. And yet God began to move there too. Mm-hmm. And they could have sat in their corner and pouted and go, oh, God, no. Just a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating and important time to be awake. Mm. Yeah. So.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, one of the ways that I know that I am in what you call liminal space is I start to squirm. And I don't mean like really squirming around on the floor like a worm, but I'm so uneasy. And I start like grasping for those things that I thought were going to keep me safe. I mean, we're talking about things that don't move, things that don't change, things that are really true, things that remain. And I start to grasp for those things, and we just have so few of those right now. We just have so few. If I think about playing without the Queen, it looks like so many things. It looks like the Queen could be public school for my kids. All three of my kids go to public school. Gone. Mm-hmm. Right? It could be my relationship with my husband. We used to go out on dates. That was kind of our time. Not many, but that's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone to Walmart twice alone. That's been our time.
That's exciting.
Super exciting.
It is.
Super.
You ever been to the donut section? Whoa.
Oh, baby. You can find us in the fishing aisle. That's mostly where we spend our time. I mean, there's so many ways that we're playing without the Queen. And I love your questions. So what are the new ways that God is at work? Can we, instead of grasping for that Queen, start to ask ourselves some better questions? Instead of, what am I going to do now? How is God at work? Yep. What are you paying attention to? Go ahead.
Well, and that the other thing to throw into this metaphor of you learn when you're playing chess, if you want to get better at chess, like it's not just to survive. Like, how will this up our game in our marriage? How could this upsetting thing be something that helps us get better at church? Right. Be more effective at affecting the culture as a church, as a people who are incarnationally living in the world, can't even go. Yeah. The attractional model thing we've talked about in the past, the attractional model is the church is kind of here to say, we have it, you need it, come get it, it's here.
Yep.
It ain't coming. I talked to a pastor a week ago, and just very matter of fact, he goes, I very much want us to be a gathered community, and it's a very high value for us, although the first early church couldn't do that all the time. But he said, I can't even imagine old ways of thinking where we just kind of assumed neighbors are wanting to visit. Oh, I know, I'll be a visitor. We have little parking places for visitors. Mm-hmm. They're not thinking they want to be in a big room, shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people they don't know. But they could meet God other ways. What ways could we make that message and that life in the Spirit accessible? And when we get the Queen back, that's good. But wow, there's something going on.
Yeah.
In this way of thinking, I think. So anyway.
Yeah. There's so many applications for this truth, this, what do you call it? Archetype.
Yep.
So, all right, everyone. Thanks for gathering with us again. Have a great couple days, and you'll see us here again in a few days. Who knows what we'll talk about?
I don't know.
If there's something you're dying to hear Dave talk about, go ahead and send us a message.
Especially if it's about the Cubs.
I was just going to say it. But
No, I don't want to talk about the Cubs.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Love hearing from you guys. Bye-bye. Thanks, Annika.
Yep. See you later.
You bet.